broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to you all for this 30-minute webinar. My name is Richard Hall and I'm the chairman of Zenith Global. I'm joined by Robin Bell, who's senior consultant at Zenith Global, and he'll present for about 15 minutes on the latest UK water market and water drinks market developments. Are you there, Robin?
Good morning. Hi, good morning, Richard.
Right,
good morning,
great.
everyone.
Then we'll take some questions about the market and maybe also about how much our world has changed. 2 weeks ago, I was planning this to be the moment I'd welcome you all to our UK Water Drinks Conference. Not anymore. We've postponed to the 3rd of September and hope to see you then. 2 weeks ago, you'd have been in your offices. Not anymore. I do hope you're well and your businesses are well. We're managing quite well at Zenith Global for the moment. Well, we've completed our 2019 market research and still wanted to share our findings with you, even though we couldn't be with you in London for our conference today. So Robin Bell will now present on the latest market findings that we've had, and then please do send through any questions during the course of his presentation or after it, so that we can have a brief discussion really about anything you want to ask about after his presentation. Over to Robin.
Hi, thanks, Richard. Thank you for that. Morning, everybody. Okay, I've got quite a few slides to go through this morning, so we'll whiz through those in 15 minutes or so, and then, as Richard said, we'll take your questions. So I'm just going to kick off with a quick agenda. I'm just going to run through quickly some definitions, just to for clarity on the water market. Talk about plain packaged water. Water plus market, UK water drinks, which is the combined plain and plus. A quick international comparison just to put the UK into context, and also a context for the packaged water in the context of soft drinks, and then just to talk to you a little bit about our reports on the UK bottled water market, which will be launching very soon. So just quickly on to definitions. Firstly, plain water. In the context of the presentation here and our reports, plain water includes mineral water, spring water, other water without added flavorings. It excludes water coolers and water dispense. Water plus is a general term for sort of flavored, functional and juicy waters. So flavored water is sweetened with sugar, a sweetener, or unsweetened with added fruit essence. It's sparkling and still, natural mineral water or spring or bottled drinking water with added flavorings. Functional water is water with added functional ingredients, so such as botanicals, vitamins, minerals, oxygen, other ingredients, and they're marketed as having a functional positioning. And then juicy water, we define it as water with added juice. The juice content ranges between 5 to 25 to 30%. However, the key attribute is the consumer perception of the products being water plus juice as opposed to a juice drink. So just to give you a quick insight on our definitions. So moving on to some numbers first off. So this is the UK plain packaged water market. So this looks at volume from 2014 to 2019. So we've had quite a significant shift in the market from 2018, and indeed in 2017 we saw growth of between 7 and 8%. We've seen quite a shift to a decline position of a negative around just over 3% in 2019. This is a volume decline of around 111 million litres from 2018. So now the market's standing at just around 3.5 billion litres. Since 2014, the market has grown by nearly 1 billion litres, and over that period, there's an overall growth of around 39%. And our compound annual growth rate from 2014 to 2019 stands at around 6.8%. And per capita consumption of plain water now stands around 53 litres per person. This is a growth of about 14 litres since 2014, but is down a tad from the highs of 2018 that we've seen. So significant changes happening in the market. Let's go on and look at the value position. So again, this is plain packaged bottled water. 2019, we saw a decline of 2.5%. This is on the back of actually growth in 2017 and 2018. The market was up 4.5% and then 5.5% in those 2 years. Overall, the market has grown by 37% since 2014, and per capita expenditure now stands at £41, down from 42 in 2018, but still an increase on 2017 at £40. So value hasn't declined as much as volume, but still an overall decline. We see retailers, producers trying to maintain pricing, maintain their position in the market, and not reacting too heavily, too strongly to the declines in volume. So let's look at some of the key factors that have influenced these this switch from sort of growth to decline. As I'm sure you're all aware, weather plays such a significant part of this market, such a significant influence on this market. And you'll all remember the fantastic summer of 2018, which is accounted for by that lovely peak in the graph, the blue line, which peaks from May through to June and July. And by contrast, if we look at 2019, which is the orange line, we see it pretty much on a par with 2017. So in May, we were down about 60 hours less sunshine. In June, we were down about 80 hours less sunshine. And in July, we were down just over 64 hours less sunshine. So it goes without saying, less sunshine. People don't feel like, you know, summer has arrived. It was a real struggle this year. Weather was such a big factor. It's been a year of extremes. We've had record-breaking heat, but also we've had record-breaking rainfall. Also, we've had spells of cold and windy weather. Although the summer in 2019 was the 12th warmest on record since 1910, it was relatively wet. Some counties in central and northern England received more than 1.5 times the month's typical rainfall for July. Thunderstorms, intense rain caused flooding across parts of northern England on the 30th and 31st of July. So all that added up to a bit of a sorry state. So if we look at the rainfall, it's almost a reverse picture. We see 2018, a wonderful dip in the chart down through May, June and July. By contrast, 2019, the orange line, pretty much on a par again with 2017, a really wet summer. In May, we were up 34% on rainfall on the previous year. In June, we were up over 200% on rainfall from 2018. And then in July, we were up about 60% on rainfall. As I said, lots of flooding. More flooding followed in the autumn, particularly in the Midlands, assisted by long periods of rain. England as a whole had its 5th wettest autumn with, I think, an average of around 350 millimetres of rain. So rain was falling on pretty saturated ground, and it was, you know, essentially a really, really wet year. So on to, just moving on to the next slide. So let's see in a little bit more detail how that's played out across different parts of the market.
You clicked too, Robin. Just go back one. Yep.
Oh, thank you, Richard. So yes, as I was saying, let's just look at how that's played out on different parts of the market. Packaged versus private label volume is a very interesting picture. Packaged branded rather. If we look at branded, we see this is where the greatest decline has occurred. We see a drop of around 4.7% on 2018. By contrast, private label has fared a lot better. Private label only dropping less than 1% at 0.7%. Own label now represents around 43% of the packaged water market. I think own label fared better due to a number of factors. Consumers trading down. There's a wider range of private label products and increasing production efficiencies among some of the large own label suppliers. And consumers, I think, are offered own label bottled water at most price points, from economy to mainstream to premium, in most of the multiples. And most multiples, I think, carry at least two pricing tiers in own label water. So the choice available to consumers now is much more interesting and much more relevant to different segments of the population. So moving on from branded versus private label, let's look at sparkling versus still water volume. So again, still, as I'm sure you're aware, accounts for the majority of the volume. Still declined by just over 3%, whereas by contrast, sparkling declined by around 2.5%. Still water accounted for about 85% of the market, and we think, consumers have much more reason to buy sparkling. It's perhaps slightly less affected by the plastic issue. It's less of a, it's less substituted by tap water, and it's perhaps relevant to different consumption occasions than still water. So we think these factors have helped to reduce the level of decline in sparkling over the period. So let's look at a forecast. This is a particularly challenging environment we're in at the moment. I would say this forecast is in the context of pre-coronavirus situation. We've seen just very, very recently a lot of panic buying, consumers stocking up. We've seen the water aisles emptying in retailers. I think it's such early days yet before we can really take a firm view on how this current situation is going to pan out. It could be that we see a significant period of growth followed by a switch back to sort of a flat position or even a decline position, depending on the longevity of the virus situation and how consumers react to this situation, and whether now they're stocked up on water. Does that necessarily mean they're going to increase their rate of consumption, or will the consumption rate be maintained as it has done in previous years? And we'll see a real slowdown as we get into the second half of the year. So all those things remain unanswered at the moment. So outside of the coronavirus situation, we think obviously weather has been such a significant factor. We have a clear belief that the plastic issue will continue to take sort of centre stage and will impact on consumer purchases. And there's other factors here as well. We expect to see consumers to move outside of the water category into other soft drinks categories. Other soft drinks categories have been working hard to improve their perception around health and permissibility. I think there's also some factors at play where water is perhaps a little bit less accessible and is being replaced by other soft drinks on the shelves in convenience and in the multiples. So we feel, looking forward, obviously 2019 we have a decline of around 3%. We think this is likely to continue, although perhaps to a slightly lesser extent over the next couple of years, predominantly driven by consumers changing purchasing habits and varying degrees of impact on the plastic issue as well. So we see a dip through 2022 of around 50 litres per capita consumption, again then rising to 2024 to around 52 litres. and the market then growing back up to 3.6 billion litres by 2024.
Robin, I'm going to have to speed you up a tiny bit. I'm also going to say to the IT team, I don't see any questions on the screen yet, and it may be that people can't ask any yet, but I would like to see a question box if we can. And it's coming there. Good, that's great, thanks. So do ask your questions as they come. I'll hand back to Robin, and then if we just carry on through the rest of the presentation. Thanks.
Thanks, Richard. Okay, so just to quickly skip over these trends, as I've mentioned, significant reversal of recent growth, lower levels of sunshine and higher rainfall, private label performed better than the overall market, sparkling water performed better than still, and still plain water is most affected by the plastic issue. Recycled PET is becoming an increasingly important material in terms of packaging, and that will hopefully start to offset consumer concerns around plastic, and consumers are moving outside of the water category to other perceived healthier soft drinks. So on to Water Plus. Excuse me. Water Plus actually declined more significantly in 2019 than plain water, down from 550 million litres in 2018 to 506, and down to a per capita consumption of 7.6 litres in the year. Overall, in the period, the market grew from 2014 to 2019 by 35%, with a compound annual growth rate of 6.2. Onto the split between flavoured, functional and juicy water. So flavoured water, I think, bore the brunt of the decline, dropping nearly 10% from 484 million litres to 436 in 2019. Juicy water fared quite a bit better, only declining nearly 3%. And one area of interest really is functional water. The category has grown by 5.3%. So a real contrast to the other two, although from a very low base, it reached around 16.5 million litres in 2019. And typically this category sees lots of new developments, lots of NPD, and lots of interest for consumers. So what does the market in Water Plus look like going forwards? We have obviously the near 9% decline this year. Next year, we're forecasting around 5% decline, and then onwards into around 4%, with a very slow recovery from sort of 2023 onwards. Again, we think there's a number of factors. There's the plastic issue, which is predominantly affecting flavoured still water. We think consumers have quite significant concerns around artificial sweeteners and are looking for products with natural sweeteners. So there's similar concerns as plain, essentially, but we feel that particularly a combination of those factors will lead to perhaps a steeper continued decline than we'll see in plain water. Compound annual growth rate over the period 2019 to 2024, we're forecasting a negative around 1.8%. So some key trends. Obviously, sector decline much stronger than plain. Flavoured still outperformed flavoured sparkling. Own label performed better than the overall market. Consumers have a concern around sugar and artificial sweeteners. Juicy water also still suffering from a high sugar perception. And still flavoured water is also continued to be affected by the plastic issue. So total water drinks, so this is flavoured, functional, juicy and plain water added together. So this is the total drinks market volume. We see per capita consumption around 60 litres, down from 63, and we see a decline of around 3.8% on a growth of 7.5% in 2018. So quite a significant shift from growth to decline, down to around 4 billion litres this year overall. So just a few other slides just to put the market into context from an international perspective. So this is per capita consumption of plain water. So this includes water dispense as well as small pack water. So we see here that the UK has quite a bit of headroom in comparison to other countries, significant water consuming countries. The UK has had a growth rate of 45%, China 58%, Poland 30%, Spain much slower at 18%, and the US around 30%. So we see there is both headroom and opportunity there for further growth in the market if you look at the change between 2014 and 2019. And then just as a final slide on this particular part, just to put the packaged water market into context of UK soft drinks. So if you look at the light blue, which is plain bottled water, now accounts for 22.3% of the market. This is down very slightly from 2018, which was 23%. And by contrast, carbonated soft drinks have shown a little bit of recovery, now up to 40.5% from around 39.5% in 2018. Also showing a bit of recovery or a bit of growth here. Energy and sports up to 5.6 from 4.4. Fruit juice, nectars and fruit drinks down to 10.4 from 11.6 last year. So there is some shifts in place, all influencing onto our water and water plus markets. So that concludes the whistle-stop tour of the market. We'd just like to give you a quick insight into our upcoming reports. If I could hand you back to Richard for a second.
Thanks, Robin. That was great. Do ask any questions that you might have. So our reports are almost ready. And if you would like to get hold of them, then this is what they contain. 5 years of back data, 5 years of forecasts, full details on leading companies and brands, as well as breakdowns of packaging, distribution, segmentation, and so on. And I think the next slide may even show what the deal is, if you'd like to turn to that, Robin.
Oh.
Maybe you had a slide before it with the pricing on it. Maybe you didn't. It was in the pack. We can always put it on the file for the webinar. But yeah, we are offering a discount to anyone attending this webinar. So if you'd like to get more details, then I think the best thing to do is email rbell@zenithglobal.com, and he will give you the further details. Here's his email address. It's quite a challenge to do this webinar because we're all doing it remotely. So there's 4 of us involved, and all 4 in 4 different locations. Anyway, let's have your questions. Please do order the report. The report's 10% discount for webinar subscribers. The prices are £2,061 for each of the plain water report and the Water Plus report. But if you include water drinks, which is the 3rd report, it's 4455 discounted rate. And it's really, I think, essential information about the market. So questions. There's a question about the growth in plain water from 2022, and we have had quite a substantial revision of our view of the market. I think that in 2007, 8, 9, we were forecasting that we were being cautious because there was a reaction in the economic downturn and concern about the environment. Those concerns were answered. We got back to sort of 5, 6, 7% growth, and the industry was feeling that it would be faster than that, and indeed it had achieved faster than that for a while. Now what we're facing is a plastic concern, which is leading to, I'm not quite sure what downturn in sales this year. There's the summer of last year. There's concern about plastic and the move towards refillability. Those 2 have impacted this year. This year we should have a surge because of coronavirus in the spring, We don't know how that will play out. It may lead to a 10% growth this year, but we think that there will then be a continuing fall off due to plastic concerns, which will be answered by hydration and the sheer value of hydration. And as plastic improves its recycled content and indeed plant-based other materials over the next 10, 15 years, we think that plastic is good for water, but there will be other packs that are also good for water because hydration and water are good in general. I think the puzzling thing here is that Water Plus flavored waters have not grown as we might have expected and as they have in some other countries. And it may just be that carbonated soft drinks, we have a much higher low-calorie, sugar-free share of the market in the UK than almost anywhere else in the world. And so maybe the concerns about sugar haven't played to the benefit of water to quite the extent that they are, for example, with infused waters in the US. Do you want to add any comments to that, Robin?
Yeah, I would just say that I think just to sort of echo what you said, the diet and zero sugar, low calories carbonated soft drinks, I think are having a bit of a resurgence. I think there's more products on the market. There's more interest. There's more innovation and more excitement for consumers. And I think those types of products, the CSDs, which, you know, going back a few years had a particularly bad negative perception in terms of sugar and health because of the higher sugar content. I think they've turned the tide a little bit and they're now much more permissible, and there's much more excitement in that category for consumers, and consumers are being taken out of water, which was the natural home from, you know, those carbonated soft drinks, to people to move to water. I think they're now coming back out of water into other areas, and the CSDs, the healthier CSDs, I would say, are one of those areas where they're going back into, along with energy and sports as well.
Yeah. Can we just go to the extra slide that you very kindly added but didn't present, because this is about packaging and the packaging breakdown. I asked Robin a couple of days ago about whether cartons and cans were making a big dent in the market, and this slide suggests not yet. So overwhelmingly it's a PET market. What's fascinating is that rPET, 100% rPET, is already up to 11% of the market, and a lot of the PET will contain recycled content, and if the new government laws come into force with a 30% rPET minimum, that will gradually and increasingly answer concerns about plastic, though the debate will continue. And it'd be interesting if we can find out more on that. But cartons and cans yet to show a significant presence in plain packaged water. Any comments, Robin?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen quite a few high-profile brands and new launches in cartons in particular, and cans as well. But whether they have the longevity in the market, I think perhaps there is quite a high degree of relevance to particular some sectors, sort of the public sector, education establishments, areas where there are internal guidelines and policies around plastic use and purchase from a trade perspective. However, those areas I think remain relatively small. I think on a wider consumer context, I think retailers are keen to be viewed as doing the right or making the right decisions in terms of the packaging that they buy. But I think this is yet really to translate through into a strong sort of sell-through on the shelf. So I think, it's surprising it wasn't bigger than it is. Actually, I think.
But it is coming, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think it's difficult to see it in isolation. I think there is also a price attached to cartons and cans, which isn't evident with PET. PET is an economically a more viable material. Cartons and cans typically have a premium attached to them, and I think there's, on the shelf, I don't know if consumers are ready to, or quite at the position where they're taking that decision, where the drive to not necessarily buy consume plastic is stronger than the economic decision in terms of making that purchase. So.
Any more questions from anybody? We're sort of running out of time. Just happy to take anything else from you. Let's just summarize then with a conclusion, which is that we aren't now forecasting the continued 5 to 8% growth in the market. It seems to have been impacted by plastic concerns, but there is the summer factor from last year, and now we have the coronavirus stocking up bump in the sales in the spring of this year. But trend-wise, it looks like we're moving towards slower growth, decline, and then resumed slow growth as the plastic concerns sort of work their way through the market. Overall, for the very long term, we're confident about water and its growth opportunities, but packaging in the environment and sustainability issues do need to be answered, and they will take time to answer, but they can be answered. Is that fair enough, Robin? Anything else from you?
No, I think that's excellent. That's a really good summary. Other perhaps just add also the influence of other categories taking consumers from water to a degree as well on those other two elements of the weather and the plastic concern. I would say other soft drinks categories are coming back stronger to take consumers out of water as well.
Yeah. I'm actually more confident about water plus drinks in the longer term, because I think that water as a sourced natural ingredient is something that will resonate more. I think that in the wake of coronavirus, people will look more locally and naturally at what they can see close to them, and that global supply chains may be something that people mitigate against the fact that they don't necessarily have so much transparency control over them, and water plays very effectively to that. Then I've always been a supporter of flavoured and functional waters, and I think their day will come. Let's close the webinar there. So thanks very much to all of you. I'm sorry we've missed out on meeting you in person at our conference. We'll be back on the 3rd of September, all being well, in London. And we also have our UK soft drinks conference today after that. We had a really good response to our UK water drinks conference program. And most of the speakers have already confirmed that they will be able to make the 3rd of September. We will add 1 or 2 new things as well. So we'll hope to see you then, and just wish you well. Stay safe. Stay at home, of course, if that's the advice that we're being given, and we hope that we'll come through this and your businesses prosper. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.